I'm going to start this sermon by telling you that last August, I had the privilege and the joy to marry a young couple, probably 28, something like that. Two young professionals. And I'd rarely seen such a diligent preparation, not for the wedding. I've seen lots of diligent preparation for weddings, but I'd rarely seen such a diligent preparation for the marriage itself, in terms of reading and so on. And it was great. There was probably, I'll just say, I don't want to exaggerate, I'll just say 15. That's certainly not an exaggeration. People that came from Indonesia, the bride's family. And it was a beautiful wedding outside. And a week ago, this past Tuesday, the bride called me and told me that he had died. He had died. And it was shocking and so sad. And no warning whatsoever. The church was full. Pathfinders came in uniform. He was a Pathfinder leader. Pathfinder leaders from other churches came. Area coordinators came. Craig came from this conference, and it was. I'm so glad that God's presence was with us there, and He really was. The Lord was present with us. And I will say that, of course, when she called, Joy and I went to see her, and his family was there by that time, and she was in I could see that she was in just a daze. But I also watched her interactions with us, and the grace of her every word, and she's in my Hall of Fame, that's for sure. So deeply impressed at such a time that she was experiencing and will experience for a long time, as you know, sadness. But I have confidence that the Lord is going to bring her through. And I guess I'm sort of dedicating this sermon to her. So, Thanksgiving in sorrow. So the author of a very unique dictionary, which came out not that long ago, a couple years, he worked on it for 10 years. The purpose of the project was to find holes in the language of emotions and try to fill them so people have a way to express those emotions. It had been billed as a truly original book in every sense of the word. It poetically defines emotions that we all feel but don't have the words to express. That is, until the dictionary. For example, the author discovered there was no English word for the desire to disappear. No English word for the desire to disappear. And so he made one. He made another word that refers to, you'll have to follow this. This is all quote. A wistful omen of the first sign of autumn one that might come by a subtle coolness in the shadows or a rustling of dead leaves abandoned on the sidewalk. Well, we're a little past that, aren't we, here in Thanksgiving time? But this author puts a lot of energy and research into each word he creates, along with its definition, as you can just see by the example I gave you. The book is called, available, The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. One description of the dictionary says it, quote, puts language to the many shades of human sadness. And one YouTube promotion that I saw caught my eye. It was titled, The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows for Lack of a Better World. Well, the last part of that, for lack of a better world, caught my attention. I don't know if it was a misprint. It's supposed to be the lack of a better word. I don't know if it was supposed to be a play on words to the idea of a lack of a better world. Word. I do know the author believes a better world is made when there are words to describe the nuances of the different kinds of sadness in the world. And what I do see for myself is that there truly aren't words to describe the many shaded sorrows that are experienced in this world. And this is for sure. German pastor Martin Rinkert served in the walled town, the protected town of Eilenburg during the horrors of the 30-Year War of 1618 to 1648. The town became an overcrowded place of safety, of refuge for the surrounding area. The people that came there suffered from epidemic and famine. At the beginning of 1637, the year of the Great Pestilence, there were 4 ministers in Eilenburg, 4 pastors. But one abandoned his post for healthier areas and could not be persuaded to return. Pastor Rinkert officiated at the funerals of the other 2. As the only pastor left, he often conducted services for as many as 40 to 50 people a day. Some 4,480 in all. In May of that year, his own wife died. By the end of the year, the refugees had to be buried in trenches without services. Living in a world dominated by death, Pastor Rinkert used words. He used words to write a prayer for his children to offer to the Lord. That prayer is found in our hymnal number 559. Now thank we all our God. We've sung it many times. Pretty sure we'll sing it at the close of the service today. But I'm going to read the words. Some of the words. Now thank we all our God with hearts and hands and voices, who wondrous things has done, in whom this world rejoices. Think of his circumstances. Who from our mother's arms has led us on our way with countless gifts of love, and still is ours today. Amazing words of praise and thanksgiving in the midst of pain and sorrow that I can't really imagine for even a minute. Another pastor in much more modern times had a little daughter who suffered with leukemia. When she went into remission, everybody thought maybe God had healed her. Then she went into a terrible recurrence. In a sermon preached 4 weeks after her death in 1970, Pastor John Claypool explained, and I quote, "With my mind, I faced up to the fact that our daughter's situation was very serious, and I did everything in my power to cope with it realistically. But at the feeling level, I had abounding hope. In fact, I did not realize just how hopefully I really was until that afternoon as I knelt by her bed and saw her stop breathing. You may find this incredible, but I was the most shocked man in all the world at that moment. You see, deep down, I did not believe she was going to die. In spite of all my mind told me, I found myself clinging to the hope that any day they would find the cure or God would see fit to heal her miraculously. In his sermon, he also said, I am left to grope through the darkness by myself and to ask, where do I go from here? Is there a road out? And if so, which one? He continued, let me hasten to admit that I am really in no position to speak with any finality to such a question this morning. For I am still much in shock, much at sea, very much broken, and by no means fully healed. He said that he had looked down 3 roads that would seem to lead him out of his darkness, but that 2 of them appeared to lead to dead ends. He said the first dead end road was the idea of complete, unquestioning resignation. He said he had been told 100 times, we must not question God. We must not try to understand. We have no right to ask or inquire into the ways of God. Just submit, as he said, like a leaf submits to the wind or a rock to the waters of a flood. Well, he rejected this philosophy. He said this kind of silent submission undermines the most precious dimension of our existence, the personal dimension. By this, I think he meant the dimension of individuality and the ability to have a relationship. It makes senseless, in my opinion, the truth of the Bible that as a father pities his children, so the Lord pities those who fear him. Of course, we can speak to the Lord about our heartaches and our heartbreaks. The pastor pointed to the experience of Jesus in Gethsemane, where he poured out his heart and feelings to the Father. And of course, when on the cross, he himself asked the question, my God, why have you forsaken me? So Pastor Claypool rejected this road of silent resignation as a medicine that might cure at the expense of killing the patient. He said there is more honest faith in the act of questioning than in the act of silent submission. For implicit in the very asking is the faith that some light can be given. The second dead-end road is kind of the opposite of the first. The idea that everything can be explained intellectually. No doubt, when the time comes for our Heavenly Father to wipe away all tears, He will answer our questions. But that time isn't yet. Pastor Claypool confessed that over the few months prior to the day of his delivering his sermon, he had been tempted to accept a radical doubt that the idea of a loving God with an ultimate purpose is a fairy tale. He said that to focus on the reality right in front of him and to depend on human intellect alone would have led him to that conclusion. He said, quote, like the times, for example, when Laura Lou was hurting so intensely, when his daughter was hurting so intensely, that she had to bite on a rag and used to beg me to pray to God to take away that awful pain. I would kneel down beside her bed and pray with all the faith and conviction of my soul. And nothing would happen, except the pain continued to rage on. Or again, the time she asked me in the dark of the night, when will the leukemia go away? I answered, I don't know, darling, but we are doing everything we know to make that happen. Then she said, have you asked God when it will go away? I said, yes, you have heard me pray to Him many times. And then she said with directness, 10-year-old, what did He say? When did He say it would go away? And I had to admit to myself that He had not said a word. I had done a lot of talking and praying and pleading, but the response of the heavens had been silence. But in clearer moments, he realized that the fairy tale conclusion would not take into consideration all the evidence and was not true to reality. He was struck by all the kindness he experienced during the days of darkness. Kindness from the people working in the doctor's office. Kindness from people working in the hospital. Kindness from the people in the church. Even kindness from strangers in the community. He was impressed that all of this was also a part of reality. It had to be balanced with equal weight along with the darkness. The third road, the one that was not a dead end, was summed up by him with 3 simple words. Life is gift. He explained it by a story from his childhood. He said when World War II started, my family did not have a washing machine. One of my father's younger business associates was drafted, and his wife prepared to go with him. And we offered to let them store some of their furniture in our basement. Quite unexpectedly, they suggested that we use their washing machine while they were gone. It would be better for it to be running, they said, than sitting idly and resting. So this is what we did. And Pastor Claypool goes on and says, I remember it helped a great deal. I used to like to watch the clothes turn around and then to run them through the wringer. Well, the years went by and the war finally ended, and our friend returned, and in the meantime, I forgot how the machine had come to be in our basement in the first place. At any rate, I recall resenting it pretty deeply when they took it out, and I said so quite openly. It was my mother who put the thing in perspective for me. She said, wait a minute, son, you need to remember the machine never was ours in the first place. That we got to use it at all was a gift. So instead of being mad at its being taken away, let's use this occasion to be grateful that we had it at all. And he continued. He said, and I am here to testify. If this is the only way down from the mountain of loss, I do not mean to say it makes things easy, for it does not. But at least it makes things bearable when I remember that Laura Lou was a gift, pure and simple. Something I neither earned nor deserved nor had a right to. And that the appropriate response to a gift, even when it is taken away, is gratitude that I was ever given her in the first place. He went on to say in his sermon, everywhere I turn, I'm surrounded by reminders of her. Things we did together, things she said, things she loved. And in the presence of the reminders, I can do one of 2 things. I can dwell on the fact that she's been taken away and dissolve in remorse that all this is gone. Or I can dwell on the fact that she was given to us at all and learn to be grateful that we shared life, even though in all too short 10 years. Only 2 choices, and believe me, the only way out is the way of gratitude. The way of remorse does not alter the stark reality one whit and only makes it worse. The way of gratitude does not alleviate the pain, but it somehow puts light around the darkness and gives strength to move on. It is of great interest to me that Pastor Martin Rinkert followed the same way of gratitude when he wrote the words, now thank we all our God with hearts and hands and voices, who wondrous things has done, in whom this world rejoices, who from our mother's arms has led us on our way, with countless gifts of love and still is ours today. I believe then that Pastor John Claypool was definitely onto something true. But it isn't the full story. To his testimony, I want to add just a few words about the great controversy between good and evil taking place in this world. We have this insight. Even Job didn't have this insight, and yet he remained steadfast. But when it comes to suffering, Jesus summed it up in the words recorded in Matthew 13, verse 28. An enemy has done this. Another pastor used words of faith in a time of trial. George A. Young was a poor, obscure preacher pastoring a tiny church in a rural area. He worked as a carpenter to support his family. Eventually, he would build a small house with his own hands for them to live in. While he was gone into another town to preach some local thugs who didn't like his preaching burned his home to the ground. Impoverished, they continued on in God's work. And in this time of trial, in 1903, he wrote this song. In shady green pastures, so rich and so sweet, God leads His dear children along. Where the water's cool flow bathes the weary one's feet, God leads His dear children along. And of course the chorus, some through the waters, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives a song in the night season and all the day long. Those sorrows befall us and Satan oppose. God leads His dear children along. Through faith we shall conquer, defeat all our foes. God leads His dear children along. Some through the waters, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives a song in the night season and all the day long. What a wonderful God we have. What a wonderful God we have.